All right, guys, so in this video, we're going to look at what I was talking about in the last video about using the fact that we know corresponding angles are congruent, alternate interior angles are congruent, and vertical angles are congruent for the transversal and the parallel line stuff. All right, so let's look at this first example. So here they're telling us some important information to start off with. They're telling us A is parallel to B. That's important. All right, so line A here is parallel to line B. And as you can see, we have this transversal coming through. And the question is asking us to find X. Well, if you look close enough, you can see that, and we'll get better with this as we go along, but you can kind of see that you have this angle right here and this angle right here are on the interior of the parallel lines. They're on the inside of these parallel lines. They're on the inside, and they're alternate, right? So they're alternate interior angles, and alternate interior angles are congruent. So that means X and this angle, the value for X and this angle are the same. So it's very easy to find X here. X is just 75. That's it. Done. As long as you recognize alternate interior angles are congruent. All right, you want to remember that, okay? Next example. Very similar. They tell you F is parallel to G. So here's F and here's G. They're telling us that they're parallel, and they want us to find R, and we have this transversal. So guys, just so you know, they're not always going to look like this. All right, you can move them around, you can rotate them and slide them. What's funny is now you guys can see that we have parallel lines, and from rigid motions, you guys remember parallel lines, they're preserved for rigid motions. So as you can kind of see, it's like we kind of took this one a little bit, not exactly, but we kind of took this one right here and we rotated it, and they're still parallel. All right, it's just, okay, this is a different problem though. All right, so let's see what's going on here. So if you kind of turn your head, all right, the more problems you do, the better you'll get at it. But if you kind of turn your head and look at it going this way, okay, or going this way, you can see that they want you to find R, right? And as you can see, we have interior angles, and they're also alternate. All right, they're alternating from side to side of the transversal. All right, so here's the transversal. So as you can see, we're gonna have alternate interior angles. You might have to turn your head. All right, but once you do that, it's very simple. Once you start to grasp the concept and really look at different problems for alternate interior angles, you'll be able to do them much faster. So as we can see here, they want us to find R. Well, because we know alternate interior angles are congruent, R is just 65 degrees. All right, X was 75 degrees over here. All right, let's go look at this problem. Very similar. They're telling us U is parallel to V. All right, this is a U parallel to V. Remember the parallel sign. This means two lines are parallel. That's very important. All right, and they want us to find Y, which is here, and they also want us to find X. All right, so maybe we'll use some additional information that we have from the last video. So let's start off, let's find Y first, all right? Because it looks a little easier, okay? So U is parallel to V. Here's U, here's V. They're parallel to each other. We have this transversal K, okay, that's nice. We also have the fact that we also have this 110 right here. So we have this angle, but if I know this angle, and I know these lines are parallel, and that's a transversal, then that means I also know this angle, right? So we're gonna have alternate interior angles, and alternate interior angles on the inside of the parallel lines are gonna be congruent. So that means since this one is 110, alternate interior angles are congruent means y is 110. All right, so we want to get really good at visualizing this kind of stuff. But now they also want us to find x, right? They say find x. But look where x is, right? Remember what I talked about in the last video about these two lines being, vertical, right? So if you just look at this little section here, you can see that y and x are vertical angles. What do we know about vertical angles? We know vertical angles are congruent. So that means these angles are the same, right? And these angles, and 110 is the same as y, but x is the same as y because vertical angles are congruent. So that means x is equal to y also, which is going to be 110. Now, what else could you have done here? You could have also noticed that x and this one are corresponding, right? This one's like in the bottom left of this one, and x is in the bottom left of this one, right? So 110 is in the bottom left here of this one, and x is in the bottom left here, so we have corresponding. So we could have used the fact that they're corresponding to find out that x is also 110, right? Corresponding angles are congruent, right? So we can look at things now from all sorts of ways. There's not really one right way to approach the problem. You can, if you're given lots of information, you can use whatever method you prefer. All right, let's look at this example. They're telling us S is parallel to T. That's very important. So we have S and T. They're parallel to each other. We're given this transversal Z. Z is a transversal. That's why it's on the little endpoint of this arrow. And they want us to find X and find Y. All right, so same thing. We're just moving it around, right? So you want to get used to how it looks like in different positions. So now we can look at this angle 75 right here, all right? And we can also look at this angle X. And as you can see again, alternate interior, they're on the inside here, right? If this is like a street, they're on the inside of the street and they're alternate on the transversal. So we have alternate interior angles again, which is awesome because alternate interior angles are congruent. So we say X equals 75. That easy. All right, as long as you recognize alternate interior angles and they're congruent. Now they want us to find Y. Well, how did we find X over here when we knew what Y was? We just said X, they're vertical. Or we could have used the fact that they're corresponding. So maybe we'll use the fact that they're corresponding here. All right, so we have 75, which is in the bottom left of this one, and Y is like in the bottom left of this one, right? They're corresponding, and they're like in the same position, but different sides of the street maybe. All right, so now we can see that Y is going to be 75 because corresponding angles are congruent. So Y equals 75 degrees. And yeah, you could have also used the fact that these are vertical angles and vertical angles are congruent. So as you can see, these are congruent. Okay, they're equal to each other. All right, which is keeps it simple. All right, and there's different ways to approach a problem. Now, this problem is a very special problem. Okay, so let's approach this one a little. Let's take this one a little slower. All right. So they're telling us UV, which is like this line of a triangle, right? You can kind of see a triangle here. We have some lines, we have some angles going on. They're telling us UV is parallel to ST. So this line is parallel to ST. The goal here is to find out what A here and B here is equal to. Well, what you can do here is this. Since they're telling you UV is parallel to ST, and because I have this protractor and I'm allowed to draw stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this line for this triangle. I'm going to make this line longer. So I'm going to do this. Make a dotted line just like that to show that we're extending this. All right. So now what you can see is you can kind of draw different, you can draw like these different shapes inside these parallel lines, right? So now we have these lines that are parallel. It's a little easier to see. These are parallel. And if you turn your head a little bit, you can see that this triangle, right? If you look at it closely, you can kind of see that this angle right here, this 40, right, is, and before we do that, maybe I'll extend this real quick. Let me extend this line, this part of the triangle for a second. All right, so you really want to try to be creative with this problem. This is a very good problem to practice for tests, and we're going to practice more of these. So maybe I'll extend this line, and I'll also extend this line. All right, I'm going to show you why right now, why I want to do that. So here I am extending these lines. All right, so now now that I've extended those lines, think of this line right here, this line that I extended, as a transversal, cutting through this one and this one. So now what you can see is, you can see this and this one right here, they're alternate interior, right? So if you covered that one up, I think it's easier to see now. So now you can see, if this is the transversal here, this line right here is a transversal, you can see these are parallel, and that means this one and this one are alternate interior. They're on the inside, and that means alternate interior angles are congruent. So we're going to have B is equal to 40. All right, and not only can we cover up this line, but now let's cover up this line, right? So might be a little hard to see the A, but there's the A there, right? The A is right here. And now we have this transversal coming through right here. And these lines are parallel. And now if we look at just this transversal, all right, so let me move that back a little bit. Just this transversal, we can kind of see this one right here and this angle are alternate interior. They're on the alternate interior of, they're alternate, and they're on the inside of these parallel lines. Alternate interior angles are congruent. So we get A equals 60. And just like up here, we got B equals 40. All right, so you can do, you kind of want to start, extending these lines is going to be the first step in getting really good at these problems. All right, especially these shape problems, which come up a lot in geometry. And we're going to practice we're going to practice a bunch more of these problems. All right, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. See you guys in the next videos.